What's up, metal and heavy music fans? Today we have a review for Fit For An Autopsy and Oh, What the Future Holds via Nuclear Blast Records. Oh, What the Future Holds is the 6th full-length studio album from this New Jersey band, and one that promises the continued evolution of their sound that has been apparent especially over the last few years. Right from the top, the more dynamic songwriting choices are apparent as we open on a lone piano, then building slowly into a more aggressive take on a Tool riff and gruff, sludgy vocals that when combined draw comparisons to Rivers of Nile. Expect to hear more of this influence along the way, especially on Two Towers, this one feeling more like an unholy fusion of Gojira with last year's somewhat divisive The Work. Seriously, it's kind of uncanny how similar their vocals can sound at times. That aside, this track has an incredible driving force behind its relentless chugs, like pressure building and building behind a dam before it finally gives way in a massive explosion of water and concrete, the result both terrible and stunning to behold. But speaking of Gojira, it's with Far From Heaven that we begin to get into the material that got me most hyped about this album. Kicking off first with a riff that would have been right at home on L'Enfant Sauvage or The Way of All Flesh, starting with the softer, effects-driven intro before quickly kicking into high gear with some serious head-bobbing action. I'm actually really curious to see in the comments what the hardcore Gojira fans think of this one, especially those who normally don't go in for deathcore, but regardless, this is an easy standout for me. A higher level of hate was one of the few tracks that actually caught me off guard, though, with its interesting percussive intro, like an industrialized take on hand drumming that sounds unlike anything else on the album. The closest point of comparison I could think of was actually Blue Man Group, of all things. But this is also ultimately in service of more of those Gojira-esque slides, except now mixed with some serious mathy Meshuggah-isms. The guitar work and drumming alike are both impressively technical and chaotic, leading to a final conclusion that is among the most destructive of the entire record. Pandora has a fun, continuously picked riff in kind of a melodic death metal style, broken up by chuggy breakdowns, topped off with some great little flavor slides and harmonics. But arguably even more impressive is the drumming, which is packed with even more texture-adding fills and even some improvisational sounding moments. Honestly, the work on the kit throughout this album is a real treat for those paying attention, and I only noticed more and more details in this area on subsequent listens. For instance, Collateral Damage has more awesomely banging rhythms alongside riffs that feel more like a halfway point between metalcore and the Black Dahlia Murder. But even more notably on this track are the chorus sections with their anthemic clean singing alongside equally soaring leading guitars. Killer solo on this one too. On a similar note, closing track The Man That I Was Not opens with some understated clean singing for a change, in a style that reminded me a bit of Poison the Well's later output alongside some vaguely jazzy drumming on this one. And far from being the only twist on this closer, its final moments turn into a seriously chunky combination of grooving HM2 distortion and tribal drumming, leading into a colossal final breakdown alongside the eerie, mantra-like refrain of "There will never be a life for the black heart." But forget this artsy shit, if all you want is destruction, then Fit For An Autopsy have you covered on that front as well. In Shadows feels a bit more direct in its approach, with both heavy parts that go straight for the throat as well as more melodic sections that are pretty infectious in their own right. This one reminds me a bit of the later material from Whitechapel. Then Savages, true to its name, is another straight-up punisher for those looking to start up a good pit at their next performance. Something about the guitar tone on some of these riffs is just plain raunchy, and its violent pace is matched tit for tat with a seriously evil-sounding atmosphere, as well as a few great scream-along moments that are also sure to be crowd-pleasers right up to its final moments. I can already hear the entire venue screaming, we are Savages." And then Conditional Healing is an earthquake of a track designed for rattling foundations and car frames alike. Cool cool outro with those creepy sort of theremin sounding guitars as well. Just so many nice little touches like that to add to the experience. So clearly there's a lot to enjoy on this album, but in the end, how does it stack up as a full experience and the latest in their career progression in terms of my scales? First off, I give Oh What the Future Holds a 9 for enjoyability. This is a really consistent effort that continuously has something going on to get the adrenaline pumping, and quite often even rises above that to moments that actually kept me on my toes, which is somewhat rare for most of deathcore albums that I cross paths with. I don't think it's quite worthy of a 10 in that it doesn't quite floor me in the same way as some of my all-time favorites, but who knows, maybe with time it'll creep up in that respect. I do, however, give it a 10 for musicianship, as especially within the genre, there are a lot of impressive performances here from all members. I've already raved about some of the guitar work and drumming, but once more, I think that the latter in particular really surpassed my expectations in every possible way. And aside from the technicality of it all, the songwriting and arrangement is such that the pacing is fantastic, and a lot of these songs have something a little different to offer from the last. And I give it an 8 for innovation. I don't think it's some earth-shattering new revelation to metal in general, but as far as their discography is concerned, this is easily their most mature and ambitious to date. And as far as deathcore goes, this would definitely be a top recommendation to someone who's unsure about taking the dive into the genre. I'd even go so far as to call this their best album yet. So a 9 overall and a strong A- for Fit For An Autopsy and Oh What the Future Holds. Check out my Fit For An Autopsy tier list to hear my thoughts on their entire discography. Stay tuned for my review of the latest Shadow Intent record, which depending on when you're watching may already be up, and let me know down in the comments what you thought of this album. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.